Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now is Representative Steve King, Republican from Iowa. He's a member of the Agriculture and Judiciary Committees and also the Republican Study Committee and the Tea Party Caucus. And Representative King, it's so good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
It's good to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the bipartisan immigration reform legislation that's in the Senate right now. The Conservative Heritage Foundation says it could cost taxpayers $6.3 trillion if 11 million illegal immigrants are granted legal status. Is this a reason for conservatives to vote no on the legislation?
It should be all of the reasons that any conservative needs to vote no. There are many other reasons why it's a bad idea, but the Robert Rector's study on the Heritage Foundation, it's definitive. I've looked at his work in the past. I know Robert Rector. He is a careful researcher. The numbers that he has produced in that net cost over the duration of this wave of illegal immigrants that might be granted amnesty is a floor, not a ceiling. One of those things, I think he's calculating 11.3 million people, where that number goes up from there. There's no way that that's a high number. It will be bigger than 11.3 million. And each one of his estimates are lower estimates that are easily defensible. That's going to be a bigger number than 6.3 trillion over time if they do this foolish thing.
Senator Marco Rubio conceded that the bipartisan legislation likely won't pass the House and that adjustments would have to be made to the legislation. The big sticking point is the pathway to citizenship. Republicans say it's amnesty. In your view, is it? And could the fight over amnesty scuttle immigration reform legislation this year?
Well, it is amnesty, and the last debate that we went through in 2005, 6, and 7 over immigration, the centerpiece of it was amnesty again. And the people that are for open borders, the people that are for granting amnesty, seem to be stuck on the idea that they can't pass their amnesty if it's called amnesty. And so they try to redefine the word amnesty, and they call it comprehensive immigration reform. Well, what they've accomplished in doing really is now they have branded comprehensive immigration reform. That phrase has now been branded as amnesty. We all know what that means. But the American people have rejected amnesty, but at least when Ronald Reagan signed the Amnesty Act of 1986, he called it the Amnesty Act. He was straight about it. The definition for amnesty is if you're going to grant amnesty, it's a pardon and a reward. It's a pardon for immigration lawbreakers coupled with a reward of the objective of their crime. And it's wrong for a nation to do that. And so I think that they have a lot of trouble selling this when the American people realize what's in it. I think there's a lot more pushback in the Senate than is anticipated now. And in the House, that effort is just getting mobilized to rise up in opposition to this comprehensive immigration reform, which we know is amnesty. And while we're on that topic, just so people understand the broad scope of the Senate bill, the 844-page Senate bill, it grants amnesty to everybody that's in the United States illegally. Currently, if you're here in America, it would grant amnesty to everybody here with a few exceptions. That would be those who have committed felonies that are encountered by law enforcement sometime into the future. It also sends an invitation to all of those who have been deported in the past by the bill. It says reapply, and we think we can bring you back into the United States anyway, even if you've been deported. And it's a promise to anybody that can get into America in the future that there will be another amnesty, there will be another sign up. And so it essentially is the most breathtaking, outrageous form of amnesty that's been seriously considered by the United States Congress, House or Senate, at any time that I'm aware of throughout history.
Now, there are concerns about a possible backlash from Hispanic voters should the GOP shoot down this legislation. Is this a risk for the GOP?
Well, the GOP has been losing an increasing percentage of the Hispanic vote. And we often hear the argument that Hispanics are pro-life, pro-marriage, good family people, strong entrepreneurs. That's true of those I know. But statistically, when you look at the surveys, they're 2 to 1 for more government services, which means more taxes and less personal responsibility, at least 2 to 1. And those numbers go on up to 81% depending on whose polling you're asking here. So Democrats know what they're doing. They are demonizing Republicans over the immigration issue in an effort to turn the Hispanic voting bloc in America into a monolithic voting bloc similar to the African American vote is for Democrats. Democrats will gain about 92% of the African American vote unless they have a Barack Obama on the top of the ticket. Then it's about 96%. And they're now at 71% of the Hispanic vote. And the Republicans seem to be completely ignorant of the fact that Democrats spent tens of millions of dollars demonizing Republicans over the last several cycles, especially the last cycle, calling Republicans racists and bigots and nativists and everything that they can think of. That's all a strategic effort on the part of Democrats to gather the Hispanic vote in underneath them and turn them into a monolithic voting bloc. Republicans, at the minimum, should understand that's what is being done by Democrats, and we should rise up and point our fingers at the people who are willfully and in a calculated way pitting Americans against Americans, people against people, down on the lines of race, ethnicity, national origin. That's what Democrats do politically. And it's not just wrong, it's a sin to conduct yourselves in that way, to pit people against each other and create hatred so that they can get political power.
Let's switch gears real quickly and talk about the internet sales tax. If the bill passes the Senate, do you see it passing the House, and how would you vote on this?
I think that the internet sales tax bill has a reasonable shot here in the House if it passes the Senate. I want to go back and look at the language. If it comes over to the House with a $1 million exemption in it so that ma and pa who are shipping products out and doing internet sales, those startup businesses, those smaller businesses, I think that's a reasonable exception. But if we don't provide for the means to collect sales tax when you have large companies that have created this discount, and it's a duck or a dodge of the tax that's otherwise due. You know, I've spent a fair amount of my life in business, heavy equipment, earth moving, and we sometimes calculated the 1 cent difference in sales tax and decided where to take delivery of a bulldozer, for example, where was the best tax advantage. Well, this is going on, and it's disadvantaging Main Street businesses. They're paying property tax, they're doing the sales work. And if we're ever going to get a national sales tax, a consumption tax, if we're ever going to abolish the federal income tax code, then we need to have a tax like this in place and a mechanism in it. We cannot be waiving it, or we'll never get to a consumption tax, which means you'll always have the social engineering and you'll always have the corporate cronyism going on here. And so that's why I'm looking at this thing in a favorable way, but I want to read the language and make sure there's a big exemption there for our small companies and our entrepreneurs.
All right, Benghazi whistleblowers are set to testify on Wednesday. Back in December, you said the scandal was much bigger than Watergate and Iran-Contra. Given Benghazi and the recent Boston attack, has U.S. national security deteriorated under President Obama's watch, and if so, why?
You know, I don't know if I can say it's deteriorated. The incidents out there would indicate that it has, but I don't think I have enough behind-the-scenes knowledge and on-the-ground knowledge to make that assertion, even though I pick up things in classified and in unclassified briefings. But I'm very troubled by a president, a White House, a president that could go to bed in the middle of the Benghazi attack and simply say, do what you need to do, if that's the truth that was reported out of the Situation Room. I think we need to drill into this. As I said, it is far worse than Watergate. And remember, Richard Nixon was reelected after we knew about Watergate, and as Watergate unfolded, that's what unraveled his presidency. This Benghazi situation needs to be drilled down into every aspect. And I'm not completely satisfied that second-tier people are testifying here in Congress on Wednesday. I think we need to have the depositions of everybody that's got an American interest that was involved there. Everyone who was wounded, everyone who was involved in that operation, the military people that were on the outside that had a chance to mount a relief effort coming in. What did they know? When did they know it? What's the timeline of Benghazi? And then build in all of the people that were knowledgeable about that. That needs to be built into the timeline also of the Situation Room in the White House. We saw the picture of all the people in the Situation Room while Osama bin Laden's raid was going on. And you remember the faces in those pictures. That similar kind of thing, probably much smaller, was taking place in the Situation Room in the White House. And the president was there for some of that time. What's the timeline of that matched up? And by the way, I don't think we get to the bottom of this by having another hearing by government reform, and then another one by foreign affairs, then another one by the Select Committee on Intel, then one by Judiciary, and maybe one by Armed Services Committee. That's 5 different places of jurisdiction. There are gaps between each one of those. We need a select committee that is seated to gather all of the data on Benghazi and take depositions that has subpoena power that can produce a report like the Warren Report or a report like the 9/11 Commission, so Americans can once and for all learn the whole story of Benghazi. And if it shows that the White House is covering things up, which I believe, and I think it's actually it is simply a fact that they were involved in cover-up, we need to hold the president accountable. It's his shop. And Hillary Clinton, if she's going to run for president, we really need to get to the bottom of it.
All right, last question for you, Representative King. On Friday, you announced you will not be making a run for the U.S. Senate. Can you share with us why, and who do you think Republicans should put forth as their nominee?
Well, it was a long, deliberative decision, and I ran statewide polling. We built a campaign on paper. I've said several weeks ago, I can see how to win this race. I know how to do this. And as I went through the decision-making process, there were a whole series of components, too many of them and too lengthy to list. But when you shake it down to this, that I have the privilege of having, let me say, a respectably effective megaphone here in the House of Representatives. One of the reasons to go to the Senate is to have a megaphone that would be stronger and more amplified, and that would have happened. But meanwhile, I would have had to give up my voice here in the House for the next 18 months. And the first time that I could actually cast a vote in the United States Senate would be January of 2015. This comprehensive immigration reform legislation is coming at us now. We have a debt ceiling coming at us now. We've got things we need to work with on Obamacare now. And I would have turned me into an equivalent to a lame duck here in the House, because they would know that I was that I was leaving the House. And so that would have limited my leverage. And in the end, even though I had confidence that we could raise the money, we had a pattern to get to a victory, I said it has to be a head, a gut, and a heart decision. I could get there in my head. I could never quite convince my gut, and therefore the heart didn't come around. And I realized sometime on Friday, that about 1 o'clock on Friday, I would be a reluctant candidate. And, you know, a reluctant candidate should not be running for the United States Senate. I didn't want to step out of the arena I'm in. I didn't want to arrive in the United States Senate in January 2015 looking at a mess that had been created in the previous 20 or so months, and then not being in a position to undo, not being in a position to fix. For example, this immigration legislation that's coming at us, if that is written into law and the president should sign something that looks anything like the 844 pages in the Senate, that's a genie that you can't put back in the bottle. The urgency of doing battle today outrode the opportunity to have more leverage a couple of years from now.
All right, Representative Steve King, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Kathleen.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.